Federal jury finds rapper Sean Kingston and his mother guilty on all charges in their fraud trial. The pair accused of acquiring luxury items but scheming never to pay for them. The artist, whose real name is Sean Anderson, left the courtroom tonight without speaking to reporters. He'll be on house arrest until sentenced.
The Sean Kingston saga just took a seriously dramatic turn in court.
Well, really? What happened?
He and his mother, Janice, found guilty.
Wow. Guilty of what exactly?
Well, basically acquiring all this super luxurious stuff, high-end cars, really flashy jewelry,
Right.
and allegedly using fake wire transfers to get it all. Without paying, obviously.
Okay, yeah, that sounds pretty blatant.
It does. And the feds, well, they clearly weren't impressed. Sentencing is already scheduled July 11th.
July 11th. So some serious consequences are definitely on the table.
Absolutely. Get ready for that.
What's kind of fascinating here is just the sheer boldness of it all.
Yeah.
What they're accused of, anyway.
Right.
I mean, this isn't like a small-time thing. The guilty verdict suggests that it was pretty calculated, a sustained effort to get major assets from businesses without paying.
Yeah, planned out.
It really makes you wonder about the thinking behind it, you know, like the level of feeling like they wouldn't get caught.
Totally. And just when you think the courtroom stuff is winding down, guess who jumps in?
Oh, let me guess. Someone unexpected.
Rick Ross, the boss himself.
No way. What did he say?
He's been publicly, throwing shade at Kingston, saying this wasn't just a one-time mistake, but something that had been going on for a while.
Interesting. Like a pattern.
Exactly. But wait, it gets even wilder. Ross is even bringing up Kingston's old jet ski accident. Remember that from 2011?
Vaguely, yeah. That seemed odd at the time, didn't it?
Well, Ross is kind of hinting there might be more to that story than we ever knew.
Okay, now that adds a layer. It brings up a big point about the timeline, right? If Ross is suggesting things, it paints a picture of potentially years of, deceptive behavior. I mean, the jet ski thing isn't part of these charges, obviously.
No.
But it definitely changes how people might see Kingston now, doesn't it? Raises questions about, a potential pattern.
For sure. Okay, let's really get into how this alleged scam was supposed to work, because it sounds like something out of a movie.
Okay, lay it out.
So, the alleged method. Target businesses selling the really high-end stuff, luxury cars, the kind that cost a fortune.
Right, the music video lifestyle stuff.
Exactly, jewelry that's just blindingly expensive.
Yeah.
And electronics. Get this, like a crazy 232-inch LED screen.
232 inches, that's insane. How much is that worth?
$115,000.
Wow.
And the alleged trick to get all this? Fake wire transfers, digital promises of payment that apparently never actually showed up.
So sending groups of transfer that wasn't real.
Seems like it. And here's the kicker. They supposedly name-dropped Justin Bieber to build trust.
Bieber. How did that work?
Like promising shout-outs, big promotional opportunities, maybe exposure through Bieber, all in exchange for the goods up front.
Huh. Leveraging that celebrity connection.
And apparently it worked, at least for a while. We're talking a $160,000 bulletproof Escalade.
And a
massive TV, almost $500,000 in jewelry.
$500,000.
Yeah. And a $285,000 Audemars Piguet watch. That was the one supposedly tied to the Bieber exposure promise.
That's quite a shopping list. Funded by alleged fraud.
Talk about living large on, someone else's dime, right?
Yeah. The alleged use of that celebrity association, name-dropping Bieber. That's particularly interesting, isn't it?
How so?
Well, it just shows how that perceived link to fame, to influence can be used, how it can, grease the wheels, gain trust, make these deals happen.
Right, makes people lower their guard, maybe.
Exactly. And it also makes you think about the responsibility of the businesses, too. Doing their homework, their due diligence, even when dealing with someone who seems famous or connected.
Good point. But hold on, this apparently wasn't just Sean Kingston acting alone.
Okay. The mother, Janice.
Yeah, she's being painted as, the real mastermind here, the one pulling the strings.
The ringleader, sort of.
Kind of. And apparently, this isn't her first run-in with this kind of thing. Back in 2006, she was actually convicted of bank fraud.
Bank fraud? Okay, so there's a history there.
Definitely. So the authorities seem to be looking at them as a pretty seasoned pair when it comes to financial deception.
That prior conviction for the mother.
Yeah.
That's a really crucial piece of this, isn't it?
Seems like it.
It suggests, a potential pattern like we talked about. And it could definitely impact her sentencing, you'd think.
For sure.
And it also makes it harder to argue that Sean was just, an innocent bystander or somehow totally clueless about it all.
Right. So guilty verdicts handed down. What happened right after?
Okay, yeah. What's the immediate situation?
Well, Sean was initially put on house arrest. He managed to post bond, a $500,000 property bond, and $200,000 in cash bail.
Okay, so he was home, monitored.
For a bit. His mom, Janice, not so lucky. She was taken straight into federal custody. Right away, no house arrest for her.
Reflect how they view her role, maybe, and the prior conviction.
Probably. And the defense. They tried arguing Sean was just this naive celebrity, didn't understand business deals.
The clueless celebrity defense.
Yeah, pretty much. And Janice's team apparently even suggested the vendors might have been shady themselves, trying to flip it.
Wow. Trying to shift the blame. You really can't make this stuff up sometimes.
Seriously.
Yeah, the different outcomes right after the verdict. Kingston on house arrest initially. His mother immediately detained. That probably reflects the court's first take on their roles, the risk factors involved.
Makes sense.
And clearly, the jury just wasn't buying the defense's story. Not the clueless angle, not the shady vendor angle.
Nope. Now let's circle back to Rick Ross for a second.
Right, the commentary.
This isn't just some random celebrity weighing in. These two, Ross and Kingston, they have a history, a long one.
How long?
Like a 17-year relationship. They've been in each other's music videos. Ross kind of co-signed him early on.
Right, I remember that connection.
Kingston used to call Ross his big brother. They seemed really tight.
Okay, yeah, that context is important.
So for Ross to publicly question Kingston now, call out this alleged pattern, and then go silent.
The silence is interesting, too.
It definitely makes you wonder, right? What does he know? Or what does he suspect he knows? Was he maybe aware of some of this stuff going on?
Well, that deep history between them,
Yeah.
it really adds weight to Ross's initial comments, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then the silence that followed.
Yeah.
It raises totally legitimate questions about how much he might have known about Kingston's financial activities. I mean, someone that close.
You'd think they'd have some idea.
You'd think they'd have some insight into his lifestyle, how he was funding it. His decision to stop talking about it publicly could be for all sorts of reasons, legal, personal. Who knows? But it's noticeable.
Definitely noticeable. Okay, so looking ahead to sentencing on July 11th, what kind of time are they actually facing here?
Well, each wire fraud charge, and there are multiple,
Right.
carries a maximum of 20 years in prison.
20 years per charge. Wow.
Per charge. Now, a huge factor will be whether the judge decides those sentences should run consecutively, meaning one after the other,
Stacking up.
or concurrently, meaning served at the same time. That makes a massive difference in the total time served.
Huge difference. And what about their backgrounds? Kingston's a first-time federal offender, right? Does that help?
It could be a mitigating factor, yeah. The judge will consider that he doesn't have a prior federal record. However,
His mother's prior conviction.
exactly, her 2006 bank fraud conviction will absolutely be a significant factor, likely an aggravating one for her sentence.
Yeah, can't imagine that helps her case at all.
Not at all. And remember, the prosecution has apparently already labeled them masters of deception.
Oof. That doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't exactly signal they'll be pushing for leniency, does it?
Not really a slap on the wrist kind of description.
It really highlights how seriously the court views these kinds of financial crimes, especially when they involve, such large amounts and this alleged pattern of trickery. The judge has a lot to weigh the harm to the victims, the defendants' histories, the specifics of the crimes.
A lot to consider. And speaking of things not going Kingston's way, remember that house arrest?
Yeah, the $700,000 bond package.
Well, that didn't last. It got revoked.
Revoked. Why?
Turns out he couldn't actually come up with the full bail amount. He was short $100,000 on the cash part of it.
Oh, wow. So he couldn't make bail after all.
Nope. So no more chilling at home for him. He's now in federal custody waiting for sentencing.
So all that alleged high living, the image,
Mm-hmm.
and he couldn't cover the bail.
The irony is pretty thick, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And his failure to meet those bail requirements, it kind of suggests his actual financial situation maybe wasn't quite what the flashy lifestyle implied.
Seems that way.
And being detained now, that's likely another thing the court will just note when it comes to sentencing.
Right. Now, what about all the stuff, the flashy things they allegedly got without paying?
The cars, the jewelry, the giant TV.
Yeah, all the stuff the feds grabbed in that SWAT raid back in May. What happens to it now?
Well, there are a few usual routes for seized assets in cases like this. Some of it could potentially be returned directly to the businesses they allegedly ripped off. Like, remember that jeweler, Moshe, who was reportedly out a lot?
Yeah, I remember reading about him.
You might get some pieces back, perhaps. Another possibility is forced restitution.
Meaning they have to pay the money back.
Exactly. They'd be ordered to pay back the value of the goods. And then there's federal forfeiture.
Which means?
The government basically takes ownership of everything and can auction it off. Sell it to cover the debts, fines, court costs. You know?
So that bulletproof Escalade could end up on like a government auction site?
Could happen. With a government surplus sticker, just like you said.
Wow.
Yeah, recovering and redistributing those assets is standard procedure. The main goal is usually to try and make the victims whole, compensate them for their losses. But it can be a complex legal process, figuring out who gets what and the current value.
Makes sense. Now, what about the public reaction to all this? Are people feeling sorry for them?
Doesn't seem like it from what you see online and in commentary.
Yeah, that's the vibe I get too.
There seems to be a lot of frustration, actually. People talking about that whole fake it till you make it lifestyle and how this is where it can end up.
Right, like seeing consequences for it.
Yeah. There doesn't seem to be a huge wave of public sympathy for them. It feels pretty telling.
Definitely.
And that public reaction, it probably taps into a wider feeling in society about accountability, right? And fairness. When people, especially famous ones, get convicted of major financial crimes.
People want justice.
Exactly. There's often not much patience for those who allegedly got rich or lived rich through dishonest ways.
Yeah, that tracks. So wrapping this up, what's actually next for Sean Kingston? Where's he go from here?
Well, his legal team is already saying they plan to appeal the verdict.
Okay, so this might drag on legally.
It could.
Yeah.
An appeal means more legal battles, potentially prolonging the whole thing.
Yeah.
But the immediate reality, he's locked up in federal custody right now.
Right. That's the situation today.
And his music career, which, let's be honest, had already kind of cooled off.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly peaking.
It now faces this massive dark cloud. Any thoughts he might have had about a comeback? They're definitely on pause. Indefinitely, maybe.
Hard to plan a tour from federal custody.
Pretty much impossible. So, regardless of appeals, his immediate future is incarceration. That's a huge turning point for his life, his career. Massive implications.
Yeah, absolutely massive. And that's our deep dive for today. Guilty verdicts, Rick Ross stirring things up, and a whole load of expensive stuff, potentially finding new homes soon.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about the real price of trying to live a life you haven't actually earned.
And how reality and the law can eventually catch up. Definitely something to chew on.